This is Andreas Antonopoulos from Let's Talk Bitcoin. I'm here in Argentina at the Latin America Bitcoin Conference. I'm really excited to have Josh Zerlan, Chief Operating Officer of Butterfly Labs, here today. Josh, how are things?
Things are great. This has been a fantastic conference so far.
So Butterfly Labs is one of the first companies that brought ASIC mining to the masses with a series of products that enabled people to almost plug and play mining equipment and have to set up their own rigs and really deliver that mining experience, right?
Yes, that's been our focus, is to be able to bring mining to the people that wouldn't normally mine, or the new people that aren't exactly as technical savvy as the traditional Bitcoin miner.
Probably the best known ASIC miner, I guess, is the Jalapeno, which has been selling many units over a long period of time. At least that's the one I've heard of the most. But you have a much broader range of products.
Yes, the Jalapeno has been just wildly popular. It exceeded our expectations phenomenally. We've shipped tens of thousands of those units alone. But we do have a wide range, from anything from the small scale, which we use for the Jalapeno for, to the industrial scale, which is our mini rig, which is upwards of 500 gigahash per second, in contrast to the Jalapeno, which is 5 gigahash per second.
And recently, the change in price has certainly readjusted the profitability of mining, and some of the equipment that perhaps had seemed to be reaching the end of life in terms of profitability because of the increase in mining difficulty, with the increase in the Bitcoin price, suddenly came back into play, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been just an absolutely wild ride. When we originally started designing the ASICs, we were looking at, a $6 to $18 price point for the Bitcoin exchange rate, and it started going up from there. So we had to readjust the pricing model and everything. And what we found was, at the $100 price point, when it was hovering there for a while, profitability of our units was up until about 900 million difficulty. And even today, we haven't even reached that at a $100 price point. At a $1,000 price point, that goes up 1,000-fold. So the difficulty could just skyrocket, and they would still be profitable. So we still have people buying the 65 nanometer stuff today, even in the face of 28 being imminent, and in the future, lower process node as well.
One of the concepts I've been trying to explain to startups in the Bitcoin space is that nothing works on a linear scale. And if you become successful in Bitcoin, the most dangerous thing is you become successful so fast that you're overwhelmed by logarithmic demand.
Yes, it's been a shock. We grew from 3 employees last year, a little about a year and a half ago, and we have over 100 employees now. And we scaled up from just a handful. After the FPGA products, we had about 14 employees. By the time we started shipping the ASIC products, we had over 50, and then by the time we really scaled up the ASICs and we've cleared the backlog, as I said, we're over 100. And trying to scale up a business that quickly in the matter of months, from 14 people to 114 people, is a logistics nightmare. And it's one of the things that contributed to our delays in getting orders out. And it's been a real struggle.
So for some of the early buyers, certainly one of the difficulties in this model has been that since the original purchase was priced in Bitcoin, and the delays obviously were affecting the potential profitability of the rigs, it became a widening gap for some of the earlier buyers who were seeing their initial investment. Essentially, if they'd kept on to the Bitcoin, they would have increased in value, and they couldn't do that because they were waiting for rigs. So it became a bit of an adventure and a waiting game. I know you had a significant backlog of orders and were unable to deliver as quickly as you wanted. So how is that situation today? Where does the backlog stand, and how confident are you in terms of delivering rapidly?
Well, let me address the first part of that. delay in our shipping, which we're very sorry for. When we first priced these, we've always priced these in US dollars, not in Bitcoin, precisely because of the volatility of Bitcoin. We do accept Bitcoin, obviously, through BitPay, who's been great throughout this whole process. But we do this in US dollars because of precisely that problem. We don't want to be in the position of, well, we took your Bitcoin, we sold this to you for 80 Bitcoins, but now 80 Bitcoins is worth $80,000. We don't want to be in a position where we've cost you that money. So we sell it in US dollars, and the US dollar is relatively stable. So what $2,400 was worth a year ago, it's still roughly worth that today. So just because we accept the payment in Bitcoin doesn't mean we are pricing or valuing the devices in Bitcoin. So if you paid in Bitcoin and you thought Bitcoin was going to go up, I would have purchased more Bitcoin. I mean, it's very easy to look back on this and say, oh, Bitcoin, if I had held on to Bitcoin, it would be great. If we knew that, then everyone would be multimillionaires. I mean, I would have mortgaged my house and purchased tons of Bitcoins at $10 a coin last year. Nobody knew it was going to go up. I mean, and certainly, I don't think anybody knew it would go up to $1,000 in the span of a month.
If it had gone the other way, you would have been in the opposite situation. So
absolutely,
there's risk on both sides of these wild currency fluctuations.
Right, and if it had gone the other way, and then we refunded people in Bitcoin, the Bitcoin that they paid, let's say 80 Bitcoins, and now it was only worth $1 each, people would be screaming about that, and rightly so. That would be completely unfair. And when it goes the other way, I understand that feeling, and in that position, I can absolutely understand that feeling. But from a business perspective, it's just not something that's even feasible. I mean, we can't refund. And we don't keep the Bitcoin. We go through BitPay. It's converted into US dollar immediately, and because we can't pay our vendors, we can't pay the foundry, we can't pay anything in Bitcoin, unfortunately. I mean, it would be absolutely great if we could operate our entire business on Bitcoin. Unfortunately, it's not the reality right now. So we have to still operate in US dollars or other fiat currencies. And sorry, I forgot the second part of your question. This
created a perfect storm where you simultaneously have massive currency fluctuations, and you were hit by a tsunami of demand that completely overwhelmed your ability to both create the product and then deliver it, and even handle the customer service and operation and questions that would come from that. Now, you've been able in the meantime to scale up to your employee size and your operations. How is the backlog doing today? Where are we in that respect?
We've actually cleared the backlog, and it's a huge relief. We've shipped almost 50,000 units, and in contrast with our FPGAs, which were wildly successful, and we shipped, I think, more FPGAs than most vendors or any vendors. We shipped about 2,000 units. So we've scaled from 2,000 units, which were difficult to get out because these are labor intensive to assemble. And we're trying to move away from that with our new product that will be much easier to assemble. But we're now doing 50,000. We did 50,000. That number is just mind-boggling. In the face of Intel or in the face of AMD or something like that, of course those numbers are very small. But for a small operation to do a 50,000 unit turnover, that's pretty huge. And we do everything. We don't outsource the manufacturing. We don't outsource any of that. We get everything into the Kansas City office and we assemble it there, we pack it there, we ship it there. So it's really a soup to nuts operation. So clearing our backlog is a huge relief. And yeah, we did get overwhelmed, and it was a struggle to build up to the point we are at now. We're in a very good place now. It's great. We have a lot of manufacturing capacity, shipping capacity, a lot of processes in place. It's still an ongoing process. We're still growing, we're still learning, but we did learn a lot of lessons, and we continue to learn these lessons, and a lot of them are painful and hard won. And I think we serve as an example to a lot of the companies coming now on what to do, what not to do, what works, what doesn't work. And then you pile on top of this the delay in terms of just general logistics. You pile on the delay of a brand new cutting edge technology that no one's done before.
Yeah.
For our 65 nanometer, I mean, it was the most advanced mining chip at the time, and we were delayed getting it completely functional. It didn't perform exactly like we expected, but it still performed very well. It delayed us just under 6 months. So a 6-month delay in a cutting edge technology industry it's almost the norm. Mm. It's not unusual. A 12-month delay is not unusual. And so, but we understand the time sensitiveness, especially of Bitcoin mining.
Right.
So, and we understand why it was especially egregious that we were so late. And the famous 2 weeks thing, I actually only said 2 weeks once in reference to something I think even unrelated to the actual chips. But the 2 week thing is stuck. When I say these things, and I wish I could convey, my heart goes out to the people, wish I could convey to them, when I say these are things that I want, I believe them. I believe that we were going to do this in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month. This is the data I get from the other people. You know, I don't have control of the entire scope of the project. Mm-hmm. I rely on other people. I rely on other teams, rely on other manufacturing, and this is the information I get from them. And this is what I believe at the time when I give it to them. I absolutely do not want to or have any desire to lie. If I think it's going to be 6 months, I would absolutely say it's going to be 6 months. But if I say 2 weeks or I say 3 weeks or I say 4 weeks, that's what I think it's going to be. And maybe my crime may be of being optimistic. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to temper that. So anytime I go for it, I've learned a lot in that particular aspect. I want to be optimistic. I want this to be not only a profitable venture for everyone involved, but a fun venture. If it's work and it's grueling work and you're just slogging through it, nobody wants to do that. Mm-hmm. So I want it to be fun for everybody. And so the optimism kind of shows through with that. And I do understand the need to temper that going forward, and I think I do better in that aspect. So we at Butterfly Labs, we want people to be excited about our products, but we want to provide realistic expectations, and trying to balance those two things is difficult because we're excited about it. Of course. We're like, this is totally cool. This is a brand new industry. This is absolutely fantastic. So it's a hard balance to strike.
Yeah, rebuilding the plane while it's going 500 miles an hour at 37,000 feet is a difficult experience, I'm sure. But I have to say that it's important that you're still around, that we know where you operate from. You haven't disappeared into a third world country and had surgery to change your features and run away with the money.
Right.
You've stuck through this and persisted and are now able to deliver the product that people are looking for. And certainly that puts to rest a lot of the conspiracy theories which were rife at the early stage and are a natural part of such a fast-growing environment. So my question for you is, you've learned the lesson, but you're still living life on a logarithmic scale. You're still chief operations officer in a company that's going to operate on a logarithmic scale, whether you like it or not, at least if we're as successful as we'd like to be.
Absolutely.
So you ship 50,000 units this year. Are you ready for 500,000 units next year?
If we had to ship 500,000 units today, no, we would still have to scale up dramatically. Going forward, if we were faced with 500,000 units and let's say we had that, I would certainly look into outsourcing the assembly, especially because now it's much simpler. With our current units, if we tried to outsource those, it would take a very long time and be very complicated because there's lots of little parts and screws and nuts and bolts and you have to get the thermal paste just right and the heat sinks just right and the torque on the screws for the heat sink just right. Mm-hmm. Getting a Chinese manufacturer or even a domestic in the U.S., manufacturer to do all that correctly would be very, very costly and very time consuming. So going forward with our new products, it's much easier. So we could outsource that. And we actually did, halfway through our production of the 65, we outsourced half of our jalapeno production to another company locally in Kansas City. Even that, with the jalapeno being the simplest device, took over a month to get them to where they were producing them properly. So, and that was on the simplest device. So it would have, if we had done that with our current product, it would have been impossible with the mini rigs. With the singles and the little singles, it probably would have extended our backlog another month or two at least. So we scaled up. So we're ready for, at this point we could do 1,500 to 2,000 units a day in our shop. So could we scale to 500,000? We could. There would still certainly be a backlog if we suddenly got 500,000 orders. But we could outsource that pretty easily. So yeah, we are prepared to scale to that, and it'd be great if we get to that this year. I don't know. As I've said at the conference here, I think mining is going to a more industrial scale. So you're going to see a lot bigger units in terms of more hash rate in a higher density environment than a lot of little units going out. And that's unfortunate in some aspects because the jalapeno demonstrates that people want to get their feet wet. Mm-hmm. They want to be part of this whole thing, but they don't want to put out $5,000 because that's a huge investment. $175, $275. That's not bad. That's a week of partying or what have you. You can afford that. You can't really afford to just blow $5,000 on a whim. So we're actually we have some ideas and we have some things coming out that will hopefully cater to the people who still want to dabble, who want to get their feet wet. I think there's a big lack of that, the whole industry wide right now. And that hinders people getting introduced to Bitcoin mining. And that's something we want to avoid. Mm-hmm. So it's an important thing to us.
Are you concerned about centralization of the mining function? Certainly that's something that's discussed a lot on the forums and in the general community, the idea that if mining becomes centralized or more centralized than it is today, that puts a bigger target and creates a richer target for someone to attack mining pools or something like that in order to cause problems with Bitcoin. Are you concerned at all about mining centralization, or do you think that the broad availability of small-scale mining rigs that average consumers can buy will counteract that trend?
So there's actually several facets to that question. The first one is, let's say you are a small miner. Let's say you have a jalapeno. Typically speaking, you don't solo mine with a small miner. Mm-hmm. It's just not profitable. So the only people actually contributing to the security of the network are the people that are actually mining blocks. In today's industry, mining industry, that is primarily the pools. Mm-hmm. So you effectively have 7 or 8 pools, the top pools that are creating most of the blocks on the blockchain. So you already have a centralized system. I mean, you do have miners everywhere. They can go wherever they want, different pools, what have you. But you effectively have a centralized system. As we go forward and get into industrial scale mining, and this is what I gave the talk on, I'll be speaking in Las Vegas about this as well, we're going to see it actually becoming less centralized. You're going to have the large companies maintaining their own mining farm, and they will be solo mining. They won't be connecting to a pool.
Right.
And then you'll have the mining companies, who will be large mining companies. They will also be solo mining. They're not going to be connecting to a pool either. So the small miners will still be connecting to a pool, but you're going to have these entities out here globally that have their own large mining farms that are mining, effectively solo mining, So you're going to be splitting up. You're going to be drawing off lots of hashing power from pools, or as more hashing power gets added, they just won't get added to the pools. So the pools will remain relatively static in terms of who they have connecting to it. So you're going to have more separate entities securing the network than you currently have now, which is a good thing. However, one of the bad things with that, with becoming further decentralized, was an example last year where we had the blockchain split. And if you recall that, the only thing that really saved the Bitcoin network was the fact that we were able to contact enough of the top pools and have them agree on which fork of the chain was the valid one. If the network was entirely decentralized or further than it is now, it would have been impossible to contact enough people. And that could have been the end of Bitcoin. So the centralization of mining, where it can be managed through emergency contacting, is actually a good thing for the health of Bitcoin. It's a bad thing in terms of the libertarian aspect and the freedom of it. But if we maintain that, I don't know that the health of Bitcoin would continue. I don't know that it would survive in the face of a catastrophic problem. So you kind of have to balance the two, and which is the lesser of the two evils. I totally understand the libertarian side. I totally agree with that side. I'm all about the freedom. I'm all about controlling your own destiny as far as that goes. But if it dies, then you have nothing to control anyway. So you have to find that balance.
Purse.io is a gift exchange that lets you get Bitcoins at only a 6% premium and with a credit card. How does it work? You purchase items for other Purse.io members from their Amazon wish lists. In return, you get Bitcoins in the amount of the Amazon purchase. The more people participate, the more Bitcoins will be available. So tell your friends. Get exclusive access today at Purse.io.
Back in spring of 2013, when we had the big blockchain fork, one of the forks ended up being 26 blocks ahead of the other. It was a pretty significant gap. And one of the tools used at the time was the built-in emergency broadcast system. Not many people know about this, but the only point of control that Satoshi Nakamoto had, and now some of the core developers have, is the ability to send a simple message to everyone connected with a Bitcoin node in order to notify them of an emergency situation. And that tool was used during that fork in the spring. So how is that used in the context of either a dedicated ASIC miner that's connected by USB, say a Jalapeno, or some of the more sophisticated mining rigs that are more industrial scale you'll be shipping soon?
So in the context of mining, it actually, as I said before, the miners are not really directly securing the network. It's the pools that are doing that. It's the pools that are actually mining. So the miners will never see that message unless they're running their own wallet software on their computer. But the actual mining computers, they will never see that message. There's no Bitcoin D on there. Bitcoin is not running on them at all. So you have the pools. The pools are mining. Well, they're typically a Unix variant, primarily Linux, to best of my knowledge, and they're running in command line. The Bitcoin D is running in the command line, so they will never see that message either unless they just happen to be doing a get info or some other method of looking. They'll never see it either. So what happened at that time, we literally picked up the telephone and called the people. A lot of us pool operators have the phone numbers of the other big pool operators, and I happened to be in Chicago airport getting on an airplane when someone called me asking what number or what what version of Bitcoin is your pool on. Just was coincidental that I was on the version that was considered the correct version at the time. So fortunately I didn't have to do anything, but several of the other big pools, BTC Guild, they were actually on the other side of the fork. And if we were not able to contact the operator, and especially BTC Guild being one of the largest pools, it would have been catastrophic because they would have continued mining. It would have been more than 26 blocks, 100 blocks. how many ever blocks later. So you have two essentially fully formed and working chains of Bitcoin at that point, and that would be a disaster.
With significant hashing power on both sides.
Right.
Part of the issue here was that it wasn't just a small percentage of mining that had cleaved off. It had pretty much gone right down the middle, and you had almost half the mining power on the new chain. It was the worst case scenario.
It was absolutely the worst case scenario.
So in the future, do you foresee a need to create perhaps interfaces in these industrial rigs for the mining operators? You mentioned that the industrial rigs are more likely to be solo mining and not part of a pool. Do you foresee needing to create interfaces that can propagate this emergency message or provide context or contact information so that if such an emergency arises in the future, we can contact these industrial miners?
That may actually be a good idea. I've never actually considered that, but that introduces a host of problems, including some security concerns that I don't know people would be comfortable with. As we go forward, and as I said, we're fairly centralized in mining now, so interpersonal relationships and direct contact information is good. There's actually, since that happened, there is a mailing list, and we have strengthened those interconnections in terms of, here's my emergency contact, it's on the mailing list. So many more people know the emergency contact numbers now. We maybe through the Bitcoin Foundation or some other quasi-governing body, maybe we should register our important information for the big-time miners. If you're a large company, say this is our emergency contact if there is a problem, because it's in the best interest of everybody. Nobody wants to be mining on the wrong chain, so you would want to participate. There is no scenario where you wouldn't want to participate in that type of project, because it's not good for anybody to have those kind of problems.
Right, absolutely. So let's look into the future for just a second. You've got a whole new series of products coming out, and we've squeezed out all the efficiency between CPU and ASIC, and that was 4, 5, 6 orders of magnitude in efficiency growth. And now we're locked into Moore's Law. So from now on, chip density doubling every 18 months. We're pretty much locked into that path. You can only squeeze out so much optimization from the algorithm, from the heat sink, et cetera, et cetera. We're on a much more predictable growth path as we go from 65 to 20 nanometers and below. Would you agree?
Right, yes. The ASIC era effectively started with 130 nanometer. I think it was ASIC Miner that was on that. Avalon was on 110. I think most vendors basically skipped 90. We came out with 65. Everyone's moving to 28 now, and this was all in the span of the last, 18 months at most. So we've far exceeded Moore's Law in terms of our industry, and it's a grueling pace. We can't keep up. Miners can't keep up. It's hard. It's hard on everyone. And yeah, so we are at 28, which is where it's cutting edge. It's not bleeding edge. Intel is currently they're usually considered the most cutting edge, most bleeding edge process node. They're currently working on 14 nanometer. They are in terms of they're shipping 14 nanometer. They're working on 10 nanometer. So the next process node after 28 is 14 or 16, depending on which foundry you're with. So we have one more probably rapid jump to 14 nanometer. But after that, we will be up against the wall, same wall Intel is up against, and we will literally have nowhere else to go. So then we will be right there with Intel at Moore's Law, 18 months. I'm looking forward to that, honestly, because it will give everyone a breather to sit back and consider how to go forward, instead of just, we got to get to the next technology as quickly as we possibly can, and just racing through the technology field. So it'll be good. It'll be good for the industry. It'll be good for everyone. I think we'll see an expansion in breadth. So we're at this technology wall. So instead of having fewer, smaller, faster, more efficient units to increase our hash rate, we're going to start seeing them expanding. We're going to have more and more and more of these small, efficient units. And that's going to present its own problems in terms of power density, data center space. So it's going to be interesting. I think we may be trading one particular problem for another, but at least it'll give us something to focus on, and we can relax a little bit.
So it's going to go primarily from chip density to then platform and build density. Are we looking forward to 19-inch rack-mountable, highly dense airflow solutions that allow us to do this? We're going into that era.
We're going into that era, and it's already a problem because most data centers are wired for, 6,000 kilowatts per rack, maybe 10 if you're in a good data center. If you have a high density data center, you get whopping 15, maybe 20 if you just got a super awesome data center and they're primed for IBM blades or something.
Exactly.
Bitcoin mining, we could easily consume 50 or 60,000 kilowatts per rack.
So we're taking the kind of difficulty that was developed with blade level density in the data center, which took us from about 8 kilowatts a rack to 15, 20, 25 in some cases.
Yeah.
And now we're going to take that a whole level up.
Yeah, and data centers, if you go to a data center individual and he's never heard of Bitcoin or understands Bitcoin mining, the engineers can't even conceive of a rack like this. Because the cooling requirements for cooling 60,000 kilowatts.
You can get the power in, but you can't get the heat out.
It's going to require custom design.
Yeah.
There's nothing off the shelf that will be able to support that. And there's nothing that I can see in the near future that, other than Bitcoin mining, that's going to require that kind of crazy air evacuation and power density. So it's going to have to be custom designed for Bitcoin mining. That goes back into the industrial scale mining. You're going to need a data center built to do that, or built or converted to do Bitcoin mining. It's going to be very specific. So we've gone from CPUs on everybody's desktop to ASICs, which do only Bitcoin mining. Now we're turning our eyes to the data center, which did regular computers in a rack, a Dell server, to a data center designed for Bitcoin mining. And they are all going to be migrating, I think, ultimately to the places where they have the cheapest power. That we still have that to some extent, like Google and the larger providers. They look for cheaper power. They build out their data centers because they have the scale to require that, and it becomes cost efficient. With Bitcoin mining, even a very small player could consume the entire output of a hydroelectric dam. You have someone come in right now and purchase $4 million worth of equipment, and they can consume 4 megawatts of power. So you have a small hydroelectric dam, and you're consuming the entire output of that dam, just you. So it's going to be a real challenge for everyone involved, and it'll be very interesting.
But also an exciting new industry with a lot of professional specialization. Certainly the data center space over the last 20 years has developed tremendously, and this just pushes it to a whole other level. I think it's not only exciting, but also this represents a level of investment and sunk cost that in itself makes Bitcoin valuable.
Yes.
So if there is a value behind Bitcoin, or if there is something backing Bitcoin, it's not just the capital investment in Bitcoin, it's also the capital investment in the mining silicon, and even more specialized.
And the infrastructure, and that's what at least I view as very important. We need a lot of vested interests in a lot of diverse fields. So if someone does come in and wants to wreck Bitcoin in some fashion, there will be outcry from various different fields and the different constituents and everything. And any politician or what have you would think twice about, well, do I really want to make all these people mad? They have millions of dollars invested in this. They can make my life miserable. So the quicker we can do that, the quicker we can get every industry involved into Bitcoin, better for Bitcoin all around.
Well, this has been a fascinating discussion. I'm looking forward to the next products that come out of Butterfly Labs, and wish you a lot of success riding the logarithmic dragon of operations that we are all on. And good luck to you. Josh from Butterfly Labs, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you giving me the time.